like he said, it's been about 2 years since he visited for the first time, and I can't imagine what life would be without him. Love you, man. That's so good. I'm so glad you said that stuff, man, because it's going to help me so much. I need you to think about everything that he said as a lead up to what I'm going to teach tonight, and remember it in your head because it's so important, because he saved me about 45 minutes. He saved me about 45 minutes and saved you 45 minutes because I got a chance to share with you guys last week. This week, Brad and Miles are on a little graduation adventure in Miami. They got to watch a basketball game and get to hang out and do some cool things. They're going to be back with us soon. And so I got to share with you last week, and I'm getting to share tonight. And so I want to recap a little bit about what I taught last week, even though it is just by a glance related to it, okay? But I want to share this because I think it's important. When we look at apostles' doctrine in Acts chapter 2, we have to understand that what they taught wasn't from a printed Bible. They didn't have this yet. So that when they begin to teach, when it says that they put themselves to learning the apostles' doctrine, it wasn't, I'm going to try harder, I'm going to read more, I'm going to learn more, I'm going to strive to intellectualize what you're teaching me. No, what it was a simple message that Jesus gave his life and was resurrected and brought back to life, and that resurrection life is shared now with the believers. So it's very much what Stephen was talking about. Jesus did something that affects us even to this day, because we are taking part not only in his death, but in his life. And we have a generation to come. We have generation and a legacy to follow us that we have to help get them to resurrection life as well. And the generation to come is going to do things and be something culturally that we could never even imagine. But if it stops with us, then that doesn't happen. So we have to begin to mature into a place where we're not thinking about ourselves, and we have to live this life with the next generation and culturally what the church becomes in the future. So with that in mind, I want us to look at a story in Numbers chapter 21. And I'm going to read this story in full, and then we're going to go back to it and kind of break it down piece by piece. So in Numbers chapter 20, the Israelites are in the wilderness, and they want to go in, they want to pass through a certain land. But this land is occupied by Edom. Edom is a very formidable opponent in the wilderness. They have a large army. They have fortified cities. They are dangerous. They are not people that you trespass against. It's people you ask permission to come into their property. And so they go to Edom and they say, we would really like to pass through your land, sir. We would really like to use the wells of water that you have, and just real quick, we'll come on through and we'll get out of your situation real fast. And Edom says, no, I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not going to let you step a foot on my land, or I'm going to crush you under my foot. And when Edom says that, they mean it, and they show up with this really large army, and Israel is not ready. They literally have not learned how to have an army. They were making bricks and building stuff for Egypt. They were not about swords and spears. And so they go, okay, we're not gonna accept this confrontation. We're going to go the long way. And that's where we pick up this story, because as they decide to go the long way around Edom's territory, that's when people start getting really uncomfortable with the direction and the leadership of Moses. And so that's where we pick up, and I want to start at verse 4, and it says, From Mount Or they set out by the way of the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. And the people became impatient on the way, and the people spoke out against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and there is no water. We loathe this worthless food. So right there is interesting. There's no food, there's no water. We loathe this food. So what are we talking? He's giving you food. He's taking care of you. But just because it's not what you want, you're treating it as if it's nothing. What they're doing in their impatience in the wilderness is they begin to turn on God and the voice that is leading them, Moses, and they're kind of spitting on all the things that God has actually done for them. The delivering them from slavery and bondage. The protection of the fire behind them as Pharaoh is charging. They parted the Red Sea. Literally, miracles, signs, and wonders, things that can't happen are happening for them. Their clothes and their shoes don't wear out. They wake up in the morning to bread. They have quails come to them in the evening for them to eat. God is providing for them and taking care of them. Yeah, it's not necessarily the perfect situation. They're in the wilderness. But let's be honest. They could just have died along the way. Very easily, I might add. And so this idea of things aren't perfect around me, so I'm going to spit on everything that God has done for me, and this impatience in the wilderness, well, look, we're not supposed to be a wilderness people. There's a process and there's a wilderness that we've got to walk through, but we're a promised land people, and we've got to put our eyes forward on the things to come. So then in verse 6 it says, then the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people. So that word sent, it means sent a lot. But it also means about 40 or 50 other words. And one of those words are to let loose what is being held back. You have to understand, they're in the wilderness, and the wilderness is a desert, and snakes live in the desert. But up until this point, God's protective hand has been a radius around them, holding back the fiery serpents from touching them. But the second that they begin to attack the very gifts that God's been giving them, this protection begins to fade in their impatience. So now the complaining, the mumbling, the groaning, the constant pushback against authority, the constant disorder and chaos that they're bringing weakens the hedge of protection that's been placed around them. And God's like, if you don't appreciate what I'm doing for you, let's give you what you want, which is I'll let you do this your way. It says the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, so that many people of Israel died. And the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Isn't it funny that if the Lord sent fiery serpents to them, that they would come, wouldn't you think they would go, why did God send fiery serpents on us? God is mean. God is horrible. Why did God do this? No, they didn't do that. They came to Moses and said, hey, we're sorry. We messed up. Whatever this is, please make it stop. Please put this hedge of protection back. We are sorry that we come against you. Pray to the Lord that he would take away the serpents from us. So Moses prayed for the people, and the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole. This is made of bronze. And everyone who is bitten, when he sees it, shall live. So Moses made a bronze serpent and set it on a pole. And if the serpent bit anyone, he would look at the bronze serpent and live. Now this is a story that is a shadow and a picture of what is going to come. This is a picture of what Christ is going to do on our behalf. And we know this because in John chapter 3, when he talks to Nicodemus, he uses this as an example. But he says, aren't you a teacher in Israel? Don't you know this story? Don't you know how this is going to play out? Because the picture is that Moses makes an image of the thing that has bitten them for them to look to for salvation. See, venomous snakes has bit them, and so God tells Moses, I want you to make something that looks like that snake, but has no venom. Jesus comes and he takes on the image of sin, but he has no guilt. He comes in this image that's given to us to raise up on a pole, to raise up on a cross, to be lifted up, for us to gaze on and look and to see. And if we'll receive it, the thing that took on the image of sin for us that has no guilt will heal us and make us whole. And so how does all this relate? See, we have a picture of an enslaved people that don't know the culture of promise. They don't know how to interact with justice and empathy and kindness. They don't have a culture that isn't about power and chaos and control. They don't know what society could look like with justice. But Moses sees this future in his head. God gives him an imagination to see prophetically a culture where David is king and Solomon reigns in peace and there's victory and prosperity and wholeness and justice. But that's going to take hundreds of years. It's going to require a maturity to come over the Israelites to make it into the promised land and to begin to build and establish cities and culture. And it's going to be their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren and their descendants that are going to rise up and actually have something to talk about. See, I can paint this picture of Christ changing everything on a dime. I can paint this picture with almost any story in the Old Testament. God plants a garden and he puts a man in it. But this man isn't whole by himself. God says it's not good for you to be alone. So I'm going to put you to sleep and I'm going to put a slit in your side and I'm going to pull out a rib and I'm going to make you a helper. It's what God did in the cosmos where he said, I'm going to make man in my image and in my likeness. I need a helper on the earth. So I'm going to make him and breathe into this. And then we see Jesus on the cross and a spear goes into his side and water begins to flow as the church, as his bride is born. Noah. Sin is running rampant, chaos and rebellion, and the world is falling apart. And God said, I want you to build an ark of safety. And I want you to put pitch on the inside and on the outside. I want you to seal this starting on the inside. I don't want you just to have the appearance of it on the out. Because there's going to come calamity. The earth is going to eventually respond to the chaos that you've brought it. But I've got to protect you and your family. And so the side of the ark has a door. Adam has a side. The ark has a side. Jesus has a side. It's ripped open, and there's safety there. And there's a helper there, and there's a bride there, and there's a hope there for the future. And so Noah takes his family, and God seals it up and saves their life. But do you know what Noah did for 100 years before that? He preached, Hebrews calls him a preacher of righteousness. He stood outside to the world going, there's a storm coming. There's calamity. What you're doing is going to make the earth turn on it. Don't you understand what we're causing to happen in the earth? How do I know that to be the case? Well, we can backtrack and go to Cain. Cain is a farmer. He's tilling the ground. He has the fruit of the land. Him and his brother Abel go to give offering to God. Abel brings the correct sacrifice that his father taught him, which was an animal, because that's what God sacrificed to cover their shame. God sacrificed animals and made them skins to cover their shame, and that is what Adam taught his children to give back to God. But Cain is pretty proud of the work of his hands, and he's a farmer. So he's going to bring the produce that he can work and make, and he's going to try to give that to the Lord. But he knows what the Lord wants in the sacrifice, and it's not the striving of your life. So in jealousy, he kills his brother. And God comes to him and says, what have you done? The earth has received the blood of your brother. And now it's not going to produce for you. The earth is responding to Cain's action. Why? Well, where did we come from in the first place? We are the dirt. We're from the dirt of the earth. When you sin, your sinning against yourself is sinning against the land that you're standing on. And God says, it's not going to produce for you anymore. You're going to be a wanderer. And Cain says to God, this is too much for me to bear. They will kill me. The first person that sees me will kill me. And God has mercy on him, even after what he did, and sets a seal on him that protects him from, not from the consequences of his actions, because the earth is still not going to produce for him. He's still going to be a wanderer. He's still going to have a hard time. But protects him from the ultimate, to the degree that he is able to have children and see his descendants grow up and have a life and build a city and do the things that... And then you look at his lineage and it gets all the way down to a woman. And that was very odd because it's the only woman that is in any genealogy in Genesis. And we have to point to, who is that? Well, we don't really know, but I can tell you, I think it's Noah's wife. And we have this picture of even in all of this turmoil, God saying, I have a compassion for these people that doesn't make sense. And we see all throughout history of the world, God making an effort to bring us back and to restore us into a place, to bring us back to the garden, to bring us back into fellowship, to bring us back into union, to bring us back into the cool of the day moment. But here we are in this weird tug of war between this... I'm going to get there. Give me some time. See, the Israelites have got a destiny on them to inherit a promised land. But they are so conscious about their past. I mean, even in this dialogue, they were saying things like, it was better for us as a slave than it is for us right now. Yes, they are in a process of identity changing in them, but in no way, shape, or form should they be desiring the slavery of the past. There is a promised land for them, and it has to develop in their culture and in their heart and in their mind, and it's going to take time, and they've got to get there, but these people are impatient. So in this story, the Israelites look upon the serpent on a pole and they're healed. And we don't hear about the brazen serpent for, I don't know, hundreds of years later. And we hear about it in one more place in the book of 2 Kings. And it's talking about Hezekiah's reign. And I want to go there next to 2 Kings chapter 18. And we'll start with verse 3. And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord according to all that David his father had done. Goes back to what Stephen said. David wasn't his father. David was his ancestor. But there's a connection there. There's an attributed there. Verse 4. He removed the high places and broke the pillars and cut down the Asherah. I'm not going to go there. Let me just say that's a pretty terrible thing. And he broke into pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made. For unto these days the people of Israel had made offerings to it. It was called Nehushtan. Isn't that interesting? That this object that at one time brought them healing and salvation begins to be held on to the degree that it becomes an idol. And see, we can do this to God very easily. We can take the work of His hand and the things that He's done for us and actually begin to worship from that place and not realize the kindness and the personality and the Father that did that for us. So we begin to worship experience instead of the person. That's like, I feel good in church, so you worship the church experience without understanding the family that we are and the God that's making this happen and the Spirit that's connecting it all together. Koinonia is not something we can do in nature. It's not natural. We cannot find union and community like this by ourselves. We can't do it. We can't make it happen. Koinonia is the Spirit of God uniting us at the cellular level. You can't force it. You can't go, I want church to be better. I want worship to be better. I want family life to be better. So we're just going to pile up into a room and just make this happen. No, you have to wait on the Spirit to come with a rushing mighty wind and bring power. It's an act of the Spirit. They were changed in the upper room. It isn't anything that they did. And when God showed up and they breathed in the power of God, the dynamite power of the Holy Spirit, that is what gives them boldness and strength to put bygones behind them and allow them to form something that could endure. But even for them, it was difficult. See, this is the transition. This is where we stop talking about the Israelites and we start talking about the early church. Because the same thing that they're struggling with in the wilderness is the same thing that Paul had to battle his entire life. And that was a people who had been brought into salvation, but still, for whatever reason, longed to be slaves to the law. We're a people of promise. We're a people of destiny. We're a people that God has a plan for that requires us to think differently, to think culturally, to think generationally. But we got to get out of the wilderness setting and into promise. We can't just stay here. We can't stay here in the nothing place. Like, thank God I'm not a slave anymore, but I'm never going to build anything. We can't do that. We can't stay here. We can't die in this wilderness. So Paul has these encounters. He gets saved. He was a Pharisee. So he studied the law and he tried to do it to the best of his ability, and he achieved all the things that you could achieve in religion. And he says at the end of it, when he met Jesus and his whole entire life changed, he called that nothing, dung, worse than any. He said it was nothing compared to what I have found in him. And he spends his life talking about you can have it the law's way, which is obedience and discipline and striving and hard work and trying to earn it and trying to do it in your own effort. But you're never going to achieve it. You're never going to get there. If it could have been possible, I would have done it. And he's also got a that's a Jewish church, and he's also got a Greek church that were heathens and idol worshipers and pagans, and they were coming out of some of the darkest stuff you can imagine, stuff that doesn't even exist on the planet anymore because we're so far removed from it. We don't even realize the heinous things they were doing because society, Christian culture has infiltrated the nations of the earth generation to we don't even know of the heinous things that they were doing. And there's this tug of war inside the church all the days of Paul's life that are pulling this group to legalism and self-discipline and self-effort and trying harder, and pulling this group back into the flesh, into paganism, and into the culture of the Roman culture of the day and evil. And he's looking at both of these groups of people going, don't choose either of those. And he's looking at the church and he's saying, this law-driven self-effort obedience is not the cure for the disease of the world. Because what happens? What happens is the Jewish Christians that are bleeding the law and the dietary laws and the circumcision, and they're bleeding the old ways and trying to drag the new Greek believers into their old ways. Saying this would be better if it looked more like where we come from. We would be better off in Egypt as slaves. Because in Paul's day, they had not realized the promised land of what the church could become. They were in the wilderness. They were in this process. They were in these formative parts, these formative times of the church. Paul dies in 66, 67. 3 years later, we see the Olivet Discourse come to pass. Jesus tells us in Matthew 24 what's going to happen. So in 70, wars are breaking out all over the place. Rome sieges Jerusalem, surrounding it completely. They destroy the temple. They destroy the Jewish way of life. They kill all the Sadducees, where there's none left. And the old Jewish way, the way that they did religion in the day, dies. Sacrifice dies and has never come back. But all the days of Paul's life are in these formative years, just like Moses, all the days of his life were in formative years. And I think about Moses in the Promised Land. One of my favorite songs is from Stephen Day, and it's called Promised Land. And it's like, it's from the perspective of Moses going, well, I guess these things weren't for me. I don't quite understand that, God, but I know that your hand is on me. And then I think about Paul in the days of the early church going, I've got to help them see this. I've got to help them cross this bridge. I've got to help them. Because there's a people that's going to come after us that's going to need to know how to trust him and not trust their own effort and their own striving and rules and regulations. And because that stuff, let's read this. Let's read in Galatians. And I might read the whole thing. I warned some people I might do it. I might do it. I'm going to start in chapter 2. Let's just read a little bit. Then after the 14 years, I went up to Jerusalem with Barnabas, taking Titus along with me. I went up because of a revelation and set before them, though privately, before those who seemed influential, the gospel that I proclaim among the Gentiles, in order to make sure I was not running or had not run in vain. But even Titus, who was with me, was not forced to be circumcised, though he was a Greek. Yet because of false brothers secretly brought in, who slipped in to spy out our freedom that we have in Christ, so that they might bring us into slavery. So to them we did not yield in submission even for a moment, so that the truth of the gospel might be preserved for you. And those from whom seem to be influential, what they were makes no difference to me. God knows no partiality. Those, I say, who seem influential added nothing to me. On the contrary, when they saw that I had been entrusted with the gospel to the uncircumcised, just as Peter had been entrusted with the gospel to the circumcised, for he who worked through Peter for his apostolic ministry to the circumcised works also through me for mine to the Gentiles. And when James and Cephas, who is Peter, see how he changes the name there? It's interesting to me. So when James and Cephas and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given to me, they gave the right hand of fellowship to Barnabas and me, and that we should go to the Gentiles and they to the circumcised, only that they asked us to remember the poor, the very thing I was eager to do. So he goes to Jerusalem to present his gospel message to the apostles, to make sure that he, A, was doing the right thing with his message, and that he wasn't wasting his time. And they said, no, keep doing what you're doing. We don't see anything wrong with the gospel you're presenting. Just make sure that you remember the poor. And he's like, I'm happy to do that. Let's keep going. But when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face, because he stood condemned. For before certain men came from James, and he was eating with the Gentiles, but when they came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. And the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him, so that even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. But when I saw that their conduct was not in step with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas before them all, if you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you force the Gentiles to live like Jews? See, Peter was hanging out with everybody and everything was cool. And then James sends his people, and when they show up, Peter hedges. He lets the opinions of other people take him, even if it's only momentarily. And he begins to act in a fashion that would be suitable to other people rather than suitable to God. And Paul sees this, and something in his heart breaks because this guy is leading the church. And even if it's just for a moment, it's setting a tone for generations. So listen to what he says. We ourselves are Jews by birth, not as Gentile sinners. He's got two groups of people that he's shepherding. Yet we know that a person is not justified by the works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ. So we also have believed in Christ Jesus in order to be justified by faith in Christ and not by the works of the law, because by the works of the law no one will be justified. But if in our endeavor to be justified in Christ, we too were found to be sinners, is Christ then a servant of sin? Certainly not. For if I rebuild what I tore down, I prove myself to be a transgressor. For through the law I died to the law so that I might live to God. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who lives, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in this flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not nullify the grace of God, for if righteousness were through the law, then Christ died for no purpose. O foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? It was before your eyes that Jesus Christ was publicly portrayed as crucified. Let me ask you only this. Did you receive the Spirit by works of the law or by hearing with faith? Are you so foolish, having begun by the Spirit, that you now be perfected by the flesh? Did you suffer so many things in vain? If indeed it was in vain. Does he who supplies the Spirit to you work miracles among you? Do so by the works of the law. For by hearing with faith, just as Abraham believed God, and it was counting to him for righteousness. Know then that it is those of faith who are the sons of Abraham. And the Scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, preached the gospel beforehand to Abraham, saying, in you shall all the nations be blessed. So then, those who are of faith are blessed along with Abraham, the man of faith. I'm going to take a pause from the reading, but we might go back. What he is saying is, he's talking to these Gentile believers who are having this tug of war about being tempted by the culture of the day, by the sin and the heinous things that are all around them, and the world that's tugging on them, and they're being pulled in this direction. And he is seeing the influence of the old way, the impatient wilderness dwellers who are saying we would rather go back to the slavery of the old days than to be patient to wait on the promise. And he's seeing this temptation to answer the culture and the heinous sin of the world with legalism and striving. And he's going, hold on, I've seen this before. You don't want to go down this road. I've seen this before. How this ends is you die in this wilderness. How this ends is you don't make it to promise. And he ties it all the way back to Abraham. Why? Because Abraham was sent into the land of Canaan. See, if you don't read the fine print, you don't find out that Abraham actually started his journey from the Chaldees with his father. His father had 3 sons. One of them passed away. And it broke his heart so much that he couldn't even stay in the town that had happened. God says, pick up your family and you can go to a new land. And so he takes Abraham and his family and leaves behind his other son. And they begin the long journey to Canaan together as a family. And Abraham's father gets to an oasis halfway and is tired and probably old and ready to retire and goes, this is far enough. So he sets up camp and he stays. But God didn't intend for him to stay there. He intended to provide a land with a man that could redeem it. And so he speaks to Abraham and he says, your father, basically he's saying, your father got you to this far, but you're going to have to leave this halfway mentality. You're going to have to leave this part of the way is okay mentality, and you're going to have to journey further into the promise. Because if you stay here, I can't accomplish what ends up being the salvation of the cosmos. If you find an oasis in the middle somewhere and just choose to die there, then you're never going to see the changing of the culture, the transformation of the culture that we desire to see. We can't have a halfway people. What if Abraham said no? It's comfortable here. It's okay here. This is far enough. Obedience to God's plan. This is enough. And we think about the consequences of Abraham doing that, but we do that all the time. Where we do what we want to do and we expect God to go along with it. And Paul says, has Jesus not been preached to you crucified? Have you not seen this publicly, the message that Christ suffered for something better than this? Christ didn't die and suffer and be put in the ground for us to do this halfway. For us to die in a wilderness of nothing. I thank God that He brought us out of a slavery to the law. That He brought us out of a slavery to the striving and to the working and to the effort and to the wearing ourselves down for the opinions of other people. But we can't stay here with no identity. We have promised land DNA, resurrection DNA. But if we choose to, we can just die here in disobedience to the calling that's on our life. Abraham couldn't stay halfway. Israelites couldn't stay halfway. We can't stay that way. I'm going to paraphrase the next part of Paul's words. He starts to paint a picture of why the law was given. And he uses a word. He says, And I'm not Damon, and I can't teach this the way he does, and I recommend you going back and listening to it, some of the teaching on the pedagogue that he gives, because it's really, really good. But I'm going to give it to you in a much simpler way, to saying this. He likens the law to a teacher in Roman culture. But this teacher, even though he knows all the rules and regulations that he's supposed to pass down to you, is himself a slave. So he's talking about growing up in maturity and being an heir. And he's talking about how an immature heir is no better than a slave until he comes into maturity and gets an inheritance. And to that time, he's given to a guardian, a teacher, a pedagogue, to watch over him and to get him to maturity and into inheritance. But in their day, that teacher that they're being given to is a slave. And so even though they know all the rules to get you to promise, their life experience is only obedience and slavery. It's like saying, it's like taking a corporation and saying, you're going to inherit this business, but you're going to go work on the ground floor of the manufacturing floor, or you're going to be the janitor of this billion-dollar company until you can learn and be mature and to grow up into this job. And then, but they never actually teach you how to do any of the other steps. It's honorable to go, this is going to be your business one day, you're going to go scrub the toilets. That's an honorable thing. The law was given to us in righteousness. But if all you know how to do is be a janitor, you can't run the business. The law was given to us to be a teacher, but it doesn't have the experience to show us how to be full of life. It can teach us obedience, and it can teach us discipline, and it can teach us the good things of God, and it can teach us wonderful things. But it can only take us so far, and that so far is death on a cross. Because Jesus had to do that to bring us into fullness. Jesus' death on the cross is all that middle learning that needs to take place to get you from sinner to being taught in maturity. And then in a moment, we become able by the power of the Holy Spirit to do all the things in the kingdom that He desires for us to do. Why? It's because He shares with us His self. I'm struggling, guys. Because Jesus knows how to be full of life and to be full of joy and to have self-control and to bring peace into every situation. He knows how to love, and He knows how to take care of, and He knows how to be kind, and He knows how to do all the things. And He's not teaching us to do those things because we could never learn it. What He's doing is He gave Himself away so that He could share it with us. He's a Father that doesn't make us go clean toilets and then expect to know how to run the business. He says, come alongside me and sit in my lap, and we're going to do this together. See, Paul goes into the story of Abraham having Isaac and having Ishmael. Right here in chapter 4. This is like I said, I could have read 5 chapters. And it all relates. It's all one thing. He goes into the story of Abraham having Ishmael and having Isaac, and it says on weaning day, on the day of maturity for Isaac, he begins to be mocked and made fun of by Ishmael. And see, we have to understand that Isaac was the child of promise and Ishmael was the child of self-effort. Ishmael was, I'm going to do this my way. I'm going to try to make this happen. I'm impatient on waiting for the promise, and so I'm going to make this happen. But on the day that Isaac is supposed to come into inheritance and maturity, Ishmael is over there mocking him. And so Sarah comes to him and he's like, you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to remove them from this camp. You're going to have to get them far away from my promise because that's where inheritance is. And I'm not going to tolerate self-effort crowding in on my promise any longer. But Abraham could have said no. You hear what I'm saying? That there's a choice in the wilderness. Abraham could have said, no, I want my self-effort and I want my promise. And that is going to swirl and cause chaos and tear their family apart and tear their whole entire community apart and in the process tear apart the cosmos. See, somewhere along the wilderness journey, a group of Israelites decided, I don't want to be in the wilderness anymore, but they weren't thinking about going back to slavery. They were thinking about going to the promised land. And they begin, promised land thinking begin to take over their impatience. Instead of running and hiding and going backward, they finally learned the confidence to say, we're going to go forward. And Joshua and Caleb, who had spent 40 years in the wilderness when they didn't deserve it, they said, we can take the land. They said, we can go get our inheritance. They said, God will provide. And for 40 years after Israel denied them that, they had to get up, go outside their tent, collect their manna, go collect their quails, watch everybody else be rebellious and fall apart and die. And at the end of 40 years, Joshua and Caleb finally, at 80-something years old, get to go into the promised land. Because they had to wait for a generation to catch up that desired the promise more than the slavery. We have to decide if we're going to exist for all of our days in this in-between place, or if we're going to go all in with all the challenges that are presented to go into promise and to actually step into the things that God's called us into. There are giants in the land. There are obstacles. There are challenges. We don't know what life is like on the other side of the Jordan. But we can't stay here. And I'm not going to make an idol out of the wilderness and worship it for 400 years behind the back of everybody and worship the process instead of breaking that snake right now and going into promise. Everybody does have a process. And so this is the challenge. This is why this message is so difficult, because I value what the wilderness has done for me, and I value for what the process has done for me, and I understand that there's people in different phases of their journey, and that some of you may still have some process to go. Coming out of slavery and bondage of my thinking, and the way that I was raised in some things, and the law-driven self-effort, coming out of that bondage and the process of the wilderness for me has been a good thing. But I can see the writing on the wall. This can only go so far. And some of you may still have some processing to go. And I want to respect that because it's important and it's valuable. But I'm telling you, there's a day where you got to cross the Jordan. There's a day where you got to be a city builder. There's a day where you've got to be a people that are building the walls of Jerusalem. The city of peace, the kingdom of God. You see, you are the garden in Genesis. You are the ark. You are the kingdom come. You are the promised land. You are resurrection life. You are all the symbols that I walked us through. You are those. You are those because Jesus is those. And He is sharing it with us. It's not from your own doing. It's not from anything that you can earn. It's life that He's giving us by His sacrifice. And so the challenge that I'm giving for you is to say yes to that and not be comfortable staying in the place of no identity. I'm glad you're not a slave anymore, but you can't stay here. We have to get up. We have to face the uncertainty. We have to, as a single unit, as a single united people, go. There is a promised land for us. And I don't even know what that looks like except to say what Stephen said, is that there are generations to come that are going to build and be and see amazing things. And we've got to do our part so that this thing doesn't die in nothingness so that they can be great. They couldn't see Solomon's reign, but wisdom come on him, and peace ruled and reigned, and prosperity and growth and strength, and he saw no war. He lived, his father warred every day of his life. He didn't war a single day. And I know that we can't see that, what this thing could become, but we can see our part right now. And that part is, I am going to lean into identity, and I'm going to lean into who I'm supposed to be, who God is calling me to be. Receiving the Spirit and the life that's been given to me by Jesus, I'm going to take that and start to become that and live from that place. I'm not just going to be okay with staying here and dying. Let's stand to our feet. Jared, do you mind? I want you to give yourself to this moment. Because you know if this is tugging on you, if this is you, like you know it, like in the deepest core of you, if you know like you've been struggling between these two things, between this rules thing, this law thing, this self-effort thing, and you feel this tug of the world, the flesh, the sin, if you feel it pulling, you know if you're being pulled this direction, you know if you're being pulled this direction, and they don't equal, they don't counter each other. Paul is saying there's a third way, and it's by walking in the Spirit. You don't have to be tugged on by the world, and you don't have to be tugged on by self-effort. You can live in freedom, and you can become everything that God has desired for your life. I want to give you a chance to respond to Him. We don't have a fancy altar anymore. But if you need to make a decision tonight to lay down self-effort and to choose His identity over your own, I challenge you to make a move. I challenge you to make a stand, to make a place, find a place to say, I'm coming out of this wilderness. And you will be shocked at how many people are alongside you. Because we make this move together. We make this move as a family. Moses dies, and Joshua doesn't know what to do. But the Lord sends a message to him that it's time to move. And you know what he does? He comes back to the camp and he says, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself right now because we're about to make a move. So I challenge you in this moment to prepare yourself. To move from no identity into His identity. To move into the middle ground of this tug of war, to go, I am all in. Whatever that looks like, I'm all in. No more halfway in my heart.
We will run this race focused on your face. won't let us grow weary. We're not made to sprint. It's a pilgrimage. You won't let us lose heart. You're everything. You're my everything. You're my everything. We will run this race, focused on your face. You won't let us grow weary. We're not made to sprint. It's a pilgrimage. You won't let us lose heart. We will run this race, focused on your face. You won't let us grow weary. We're not made to sprint. It's a pilgrimage. Consider him the author, the finisher. Oh, lift your head and look to him, the Son of Man. All my weariness is swallowed in the kindness of our covenant. Consider this, consider him. He is everything. He is everything. He is everything. You're my everything. You're my everything.
Oh, Lord, I just come before you, Lord. I just want you to seal this word in our heart. I thank you so much for bringing revelation to your people. God, teach us to trust you more each and every day. God, teach us to trust one another. You're building something beautiful in us, God. And I just pray that you seal us with an all-in, that you seal us with a heart that says yes to what you desire for us, Lord. You've brought us this far, and we trust you with all of our heart. We trust that you are faithful to finish what you start. We trust that you are already victorious in the world and in our lives. And we say yes. space for people still being ministered to. But if you need to go, feel free. If you want to socialize, please do that in the hallway. I love it. I wish you'd stay here for an hour. But I want to give space to those that are still being ministered to. So thank you guys. Prayer every morning, 6:30 to 8:30, Monday through Friday. We'll be here on Tuesday night, 6:30 for prayer. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for coming. I know some of you guys came a long way. I thank you. And we'll see you next week.
Every